Well, you guys, believe it or not, the World Cup is coming to an end in just a couple of days. So, on this brand new episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast, I thought I would tie it in by talking a little bit about penalty shots, specifically penalty kicks and how just incredible they are in any World Cup, but especially in the last World Cup in 2022. So, if you guys remember, 4 years ago, World Cup final, Argentina versus France. And I got to say, after one of the greatest soccer matches that I've ever seen, the score was tied 3-3 going into extra time. Now, can you just imagine being one of the five players selected to take the penalty kick? You know that everything you've worked for since you were a little kid, thousands of practices, thousands of sacrifices, and years of discipline could all come down just to that one kick. Now, not in practice, not in front of your teammates. How about in front of 1.5 billion people watching all around the world? One shot, one moment, one opportunity. Well, when Gonzalo Montiel stepped up to take Argentina's final penalty, the entire country held its breath. One kick later, Argentina was World Cup champion, and Lionel Messi had finally completed the greatest achievement of his career. But you guys, here's what's fascinating. Montiel, he didn't become a great penalty kicker in those 30 seconds. He became one from years of preparation. So today's episode isn't really about soccer, it's about pressure. Because whether you're walking into a job interview, maybe giving a presentation, buying your first home, launching your own business, or just having difficulty with conversations that maybe you've been avoiding, life eventually gives every one of us moments that feel like your own penalty kick. So the question isn't how to avoid pressure. The question is, how do champions perform when absolutely everything is on the line? So again, you guys, excited to share this brand new episode with you of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. I'm by myself today. Ben will be back next week. Summertime out here in Colorado. He's on another little family vacation. So hopefully he's having fun. But as I said, you guys, this is actually down to the World Cup final this year, which is going to be against Argentina and Spain on, I think it's Sunday. So just 2 days after this episode premieres. And actually today, I just got done watching Argentina make it to the final once again. So a couple things I want to talk to you guys about. This one's going to be pretty quick, but the first thing is just how champions, they don't rise to the occasion, they fall to their preparation. And that's one of my favorite quotes. It really describes, I think, that 2022 World Cup final where a guy again by the name of Gonzalo Montiel, he buried that final penalty, and people saw just that 30 seconds. They didn't see the 20 years of practice, all the kicks, the early mornings, late nights, missed vacations, his failures, everything like that. It wasn't because his kick was lucky, it was earned. And I think that's so important. You hear all the time people talk about, oh, he's just lucky. Well, how about the 30 years of absolutely grinding that it took before you just got lucky? I think that's something that just gets so blown out of proportion. And I think life actually works exactly that same way. Whether you're negotiating a real estate deal, starting your first business, or interviewing for that dream job, the pressure that doesn't feature or it doesn't create the outcome, it reveals the preparation. And I think of, pressure. I like to look at pressure in a different lens. I like to look at pressure really as a privilege. And, Ed Milet, one of my favorite entrepreneurs right now, he's got, the top podcast in the world, is a very, very successful guy. Definitely check him out if you guys haven't listened to any of Ed Milet's podcasts. But one thing that he talks about all the time is that growth only lives outside of your comfort zone. So think about that for a second. Growth lives outside your comfort zone. Nobody feels pressure, sitting on the couch, or nobody feels pressure doing something super easy. It only shows up when you're attempting something meaningful, buying your first home, asking, somebody to marry you, whatever it is, giving your first keynote speech. It's proof that you're in the arena. Instead of asking, how do I eliminate pressure? I think it's a better way to think of it is asking yourself, what kind of person do I need to become so I can handle bigger levels of pressure? Because as your dreams continue to grow, the pressure is going to grow with them. And I think that's actually a good thing. Obviously, it's easier said than done. And when you're in the moment, sometimes it can feel very overwhelming, but pressure truly is a privilege. I think that's something that if you guys are dealing with a lot of pressure at your job or wherever it may be in your life, just having that maybe as like written down somewhere as a reminder, because I think that's such a simple but really powerful sentence to say to yourself, even on a daily basis. Another one that I think is great is confidence isn't something that you're born with. You hear this all the time too. People love saying that. I wish I had, their confidence, saying it about somebody else. But again, you guys, confidence isn't a personality trait. It's evidence in a sense. It's evidence that it's built through repetition. Think about like a first time home buyer for real estate purposes. The first time that you ever, sign a purchase contract, it's terrifying. The second time, still stressful. By the third or fourth time that you've bought a house, you start learning the process, and really nothing changes except for that experience. So the same thing happens in every aspect of your life. And I think confidence, again, is only something that comes after action, not before it. And I'll kind of just add one last thing to that, you guys. If you're ever just feeling overwhelmed, anxious for a big, presentation, or it's just something that's really big that's bothering you because you're full of, again, just pressure and anxiety, the best way to overcome that is just by being prepared, just really understanding everything it is front and back that you're trying to present. And when you have that confidence, no longer do you have anxiety because you're confident that you'll be able to present what it is that you're trying to say. And hopefully, after a few practice runs, you're not quite as nervous. So just something to kind of keep in mind. Kind of going back to the penalty kicks. One last thing that I want to share on that. And it's talking about just that moment. So you think about again the penalty kicks at a World Cup final. What's bigger than that? Pretty much nothing when it comes to the sports world. There's no other sports out there that I can think of that are so widely watched, not just in one country, but literally worldwide, which is just crazy to think about. Again, 1.5 billion people were watching the last one. I think this one's going to probably be pretty high viewers as well. Anyways, okay, going back to this. So I always think this is something good that just to help remember as we kind of close out this episode. Nobody remembers the thousands of practice kicks. They remember the one. They remember that one that won the World Cup. And that winning kick, it was built long before the stadium lights ever even got turned on. Your future works exactly that same way. Every workout, every book you read, every difficult conversation, every dollar you save, every skill you have, and every video that maybe you publish, whatever it is, those are the practice kicks. So one day, and that will happen one day if you stick with it, that opportunity will come. And when it does, people will call you lucky, just like they do with every other successful person out there. And they'll say you made it look easy. But you'll know the truth. You'll know that it wasn't one moment that created success. It was years of preparation. And that is what made that moment possible. So you guys, the next time you watch a penalty shootout, don't just watch that kick. Think about it. Think about it from a deeper perspective. Think about the years behind it. Because that's where that greatness truly is built. Again, pressure doesn't create champions. Preparation does. So keep practicing, keep preparing, keep growing, because when your moment arrives, you're already going to be ready. And with that, hope you guys have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, and looking forward to sharing a new episode of The Pursuit of Progress back with my co-host Ben next week. And we'll see you guys then. Have a great week. We'll see you then. Bye. Oh, and go Argentina, depending on who you guys are rooting for.